USS Mount Hood A-29 Historical Overview. USS Mount Hood AE-29 was the second U.S. Navy ship named for Oregon's Mount Hood. The first was AE-11, lost in World War II. A Kilauea-class ammunition ship, she served from the early 1970s through 1999. Mount Hood was built at Bethlehem Steel's Sparrows Point Shipyard in Baltimore, Maryland. Her keel was laid on 8 May 1967, and she was launched on 17 July 1968. The launch ceremony's sponsor was Mrs. Robert A. Frosch, wife of the Navy's Assistant Secretary for R&D, and the ship was formally commissioned into service on the 1st May 1971. Captain Leslie A. Taylor Jr. took command at commissioning. The new ammunition ship's motto was Arma Pro Armada, Arms for the Fleet, reflecting its mission to supply the fleet. During the 1970s, Mount Hood repeatedly deployed to the Western Pacific, Westpac. Right after entering service, she sailed from San Diego to her home port at Concord, California, for ammunition loading and training. Almost immediately, she began supporting the Vietnam War. She carried ordnance to the 7th Fleet off Vietnam and earned a Vietnam Service Medal, with one campaign star for the 1972-73 ceasefire campaign. In April 1975, Mount Hood took part in Operation Frequent Wind, the helicopter evacuation of Saigon, providing critical ammunition and helicopter support during the evacuation. Her reliable service in Vietnam and afterward earned her the affectionate nickname, the Good Hood, among fleet personnel. After the Vietnam War, Mount Hood continued global deployments. Through the late 1970s and 1980s, she made numerous Westpac cruises and even circumnavigated the globe. For example, she steamed into the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf as needed. In 1979-80, she operated in the Alaskan Sea and Pacific, and by the early 1980s, her deployments extended into the Middle East. In one notable mid-1980s deployment, she circumnavigated the Earth, serving both in the Pacific and the Mediterranean. In addition to Vietnam-era support, Mount Hood's awards include expeditionary service for operations in the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf. In 1990-91, Mount Hood was deployed to the Middle East during the Gulf War. She entered the Arabian Sea and Persian Gulf to rearm U.S. and Allied warships during Operation Desert Shield and Storm. For this service, she earned the Southwest Asia Service Medal and Kuwait Liberation Medal. In 1992, the ship operated in the Indian Ocean, supporting Operation Restore Hope, the UN relief mission in Somalia. Her crew also contributed to NATO humanitarian efforts in the early 1990s. For example, she earned an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal for operations related to Bosnia. Overall, Mount Hood made dozens of extended deployments over 28 years, replenishing ordnance for the Pacific and Indian Ocean fleets. Mount Hood's crews saw action in several emergencies and humanitarian missions. A prominent example occurred on 21–22 September 1981, when Typhoon Clara sank the Philippine destroyer escort BRP Datu Calantio off Luzon. USS Mount Hood quickly dispatched a medical and salvage team to assist. She embarked a U.S. Air Force helicopter and corpsmen and joined multinational rescue efforts. Mount Hood sailors helped recover survivors and casualties from the overturned ship. In total, about 49 bodies were pulled from the wreck by her crew, who then delivered them to Manila. The Philippine Navy's leadership publicly thanked Mount Hood's crew for this effort, calling it a selfless humanitarian service. Another major operation was the evacuation of Saigon, Operation Frequent Wind, in April 1975. While that event primarily involved helicopters and carriers, Mount Hood's role in supplying ammunition under combat conditions was critical. She earned a Humanitarian Service Medal for Frequent Wind, listed on her awards, reflecting the ship's support during that emergency. In fact, her awards and campaign ribbons confirm her participation in rescue evacuation and boots-on-deck operations. The Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal and Humanitarian Service Medals are marked for both frequent wind and the 1981 Datu Kalantiao rescue. In sum, aside from routine underway replenishments, Mount Hood's most dramatic incidents involved life-saving assistance under duress. After nearly 3 decades of service, USS Mount Hood was decommissioned on the 10th of August, 1999. She was stricken from the Naval Vessel Register that same day and placed in reserve. The ship was laid up briefly at the Bremerton, Washington Reserve Fleet, then moved to the Suisun Bay, Benicia, California mothball site. In 2013, the hulk was sold for scrap. On 21st August 2013, she was transferred to the U.S. Maritime Administration, cleaned at Mare Island, and undertow departed on the 5th of September for Brownsville, Texas, where she was dismantled. No significant piece of Mount Hood survives today. Life aboard an ammunition ship like Mount Hood was structured around rigorous safety and constant readiness. The ship carried about 400 crew members, 28 officers, and 390 enlisted. They lived in compartment berthing and worked in departments responsible for stowing, inspecting, and preparing thousands of tons of ammunition. The ship's cargo capacity was enormous, about 60,000 cubic feet, roughly 6,000 tons of ordnance, and 7 underway replenishment stations for transferring weapons and 2,500 tons of fuel to other ships. 2 Navy CH-46 Sea Knight helicopters on deck were used for vertical replenishment. Daily routines would have included watch rotations, ammunition drills, and special evolutions. For example, hull logs record multiple crossing the line or shellback ceremonies when the ship crossed the equator on deployment, a traditional rite for all Navy sailors. The crew also maintained the ship's 2 phalanx CIWS mounts and small arms for self-defense. Morale and tradition were important. The crew celebrated Navy holidays and milestones on board. Notably, Mount Hood was affectionately nicknamed the Good Hood by the sailors she supported. Her motto, Arma Pro Armata, Arms for the Fleet, captured the pride of her mission. In all, life aboard Mount Hood combined the demanding work of handling explosives with the camaraderie and customs of Navy shipboard culture. Sources: official Navy records and historical publications on USS Mount Hood, AE-29, hull logs and crew histories, and U.S. Navy history and Naval Archives accounts of the ship's operations and final disposition. These provide dates, deployments, and stories of Mount Hood's service across 3 decades.